Okay. Oh my goodness, I'm watching those numbers climb. Good morning, good afternoon. I always have the same spiel because I don't know where people are joining us from, but I know it's 11 a.m. in San Francisco and I'm excited to be here. Um, I was just chatting it up with Patrick. He is so entertaining. I almost didn't start the webinar on time, folks. Anywho, just a quick reminder why we're here today. We're going to be talking about creative income, empowering neurodivergent therapists. And this is a good one. I'm not even a neurodivergent therapist, and yet I was just asking Patrick about how can I do this so that I can host retreats or join them or do more with my life. So I think we're going to be in for a real treat today. With that, I'm going to keep us moving because I know we have a lot of great ground to cover. I think the next slide is about Patrick, and if you don't know him, I'm going to let him intro himself because he is one dynamic man.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so I just want everyone to bear with me today. If you don't know me, I have a paralyzed vocal cord, and when it gets fatigued, I just have to take a lot more breath and water and whatever else to catch my voice again. Anyway, I am Patrick Casale. He, his pronouns. I am an ADHD or autistic ADHD mental health therapist, neurodivergent business coach, TEDx speaker, and I help entrepreneurs, especially neurodivergent business owners and practice owners, work through imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and perfectionism. I hate reading my bio so much. I'm the founder of All Things Private Practice, and I host the All Things Private Practice podcast, which is all about startup journeys, working through all the things I just talked about, entrepreneurial, fear, failure, struggle, and I interview a lot of cool guests on all major platforms. I'm the co-host of the Divergent Conversations podcast alongside Dr. Megan Neff, who is the founder of Neurodivergent Insights. I own a group therapy practice here in Asheville called Resilient Mind Counseling. I don't really want to talk about anything else that I do. So my special interests at the moment are Anthony Bourdain, cooking competitions, Highland cows, capybaras, and let's say the show Naked and Afraid.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you, Patrick. And I fear that I was so excited to get things started. I didn't tell you all. My name is Carrie Scott. I work at Spruce Health, if you're wondering why I'm here. And just a real quick blurb about how Spruce works for those of you who may be new to us today. Spruce streamlines HIPAA grade phone, texting, faxing, and telemedicine into an easy to use platform with automation, collaboration, and oversight capabilities that help basically anyone manage a practice effortlessly. And that is it. That's the only little pitch you're going to get because I want to spend all of our time with Patrick. And with that, I'm going to dip back and go off camera, but I do encourage all of you to ask questions. I almost forgot our housekeeping tips. The chat function at the bottom of the screen is actually disabled. It can get a little bit noisy, but we encourage you to drop any and all questions into the Q&A below. We will answer them as we go if it's relevant to the slide that we're on. Also, if for some reason you miss anything, you have to drop off, leave early, what have you, this is all being recorded, and I will be sending out a link to this recording after we wrap today. So do not worry if you want to come back to the content later. With that, I'm going to pass the torch and let Patrick take it away. Thank you so much for joining, Patrick.
Thanks, y'all. Usually I like to ask where everyone's tuning in from, but I know we don't have that capability today. But I am in Asheville, North Carolina, where it is nice and 75 degrees and sunny, which is ideal. I just noticed a major spelling error, which my perfectionism kicks in because when we talk about spoon theory or pacing, or when we talk about how to create more of a sustainable lifestyle in terms of being a neurodivergent business owner, especially, we want to talk about spoon theory, scaffolding, and pacing. But I noticed in the bottom where I gave my good friend, Dr. Megan Neff, a shout out, I put painting. So if painting is something that isn't of an interest to you, that is probably a relaxation technique as well. Sorry, go ahead. Or are you just laughing?
Just laughing.
Okay. So when we talk about neurodiversity, I want to just kind of mention that although autism and ADHD tend to dominate a lot of the headlines in social media and are being talked about everywhere and anywhere, there's so much more than just autism and ADHD. Even listed on this graphic, there's an OCD is a part of the neurodiversity spectrum as a neurodivergent experience. complex PTSD, anxiety, all things that make your brain just diverge from the quote unquote typical roadmap. We're not going to use any medical jargon in this training because I want to be as neurodiversity affirming as possible. With that being said, something I always like to talk about is self-determination. So whether you are new to the space of neurodiversity affirming care, whether you already have begun this journey, whether you identify as neurodivergent and one of these experiences, I prefer identity first language, but you may prefer person first. And I am not here to change your mind. Self-determination is really important when we're talking about language, especially within any marginalized group of human beings. Access needs are real, but because this is a webinar and I can't see you, you can disregard that. But if you need the permission to get up, take a break, stim, sensory soothe, pace around your office, whatever you need to do, sit on the floor, turn the lights off, be as comfortable as you can. I don't want to pathologize executive functioning differences here. Everyone learns differently. And I think that good business for us means self-preservation. Now, this might sound kind of hypocritical coming from me right now because I, as I sit here today, am in major ADHD burnout. I have been in burnout for at least a year. This is not like typical workplace burnout. Autistic burnout can actually last years. And I have pushed myself way beyond my limits and my capacity. A lot of you probably don't know, but I host international retreats and summits and conferences all over the world. Since my first one in Ireland of 2022, I have done 20. I'm actually getting ready to leave for Greece next Tuesday for a retreat, immediately followed by a retreat in Spain. And that will be the rest of my year. However, when you count in all the travel, when you count in all the hosting and the energy absorption and the marketing and having to be on during events and available and being away from home in different time zones and leaving every other month for the last 4 years, I find myself most days sitting on my couch in my living room in the dark, binge watching cooking competitions, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, whatever a special interest is, without much capacity or ability to move through my day. And that's exactly what I want to prevent for all of you. Because had someone sat me down and said, hey, there's a different way to do this. There's a way to do this while we pace, while we kind of balance, when we create boundaries. For those of you who are ADHD and your ADHD parts might be saying like, I really want to do all of the things. I really want to say yes to all of the projects. And your autistic part might be waving the white flag like, please, no more. I am so tired. I am so depleted. And then you give yourself some space to rest. But guess what happens? ADHD says, I need stimulation. And being intellectually understimulated really is painful. The restlessness starts to kick in and it usually wins out. And that is how a lot of us find ourselves in these positions where it's like, I've created this dream life career scenario as a therapist, doing CE retreats and trainings all over the world in places I want to go to. And I can't even enjoy it because I can't even be present because I am so worn down. So energy first business lens. Want to start with capacity and not ambition. Sorry, my Shih Tzu's dog walker just walked in the door. So starting with capacity, not ambition. That's really important first and foremost. Designing for your best and your lowest days. And these are going to change. Replacing consistency with reliability through systems. And protecting focus. It means fewer offers, but deeper value. That's really important. And that can be really challenging. Hold on one second, because he just came running back up here. I got to get him to his dog walker. I wish y'all could have seen that. Okay. So replacing consistency with reliability, really optimizing systems so that you are using less executive functioning. I was just telling Carrie about this software that I use to create PowerPoints now and training slides. It's called Gamma.app, A-P-P. And it will help me create my trainings, my PowerPoints, and my slides by giving it a few prompts and working through it. And that for me is an executive functioning win, because otherwise I'd spend hours and so much energy that I do not have. A lot of you might think, like, as someone who puts out a lot of content, and I've been very consistent about that for the last 4 years, you might see my face every time you open Instagram or Facebook, and you might be sick of it. I know I am most of the time. It is about designing during your best and lowest days. What I mean by that, a lot of you might think, if I want to create an alternative stream of income, I've got to be creating content every single day. No, absolutely not. That is a big misconception. You should be creating in batches when you have the energy. And you need to be able to track that ebb and flow of when does the energy exist and how am I going to use it while it's here, while sadly acknowledging that it is going to disappear and dissipate. Because for me, when that energy and that creativity comes over me, I've got to use it then. Because I know that it is not something that lasts not only a long time, but definitely not forever. And when it's gone, it takes so much to regenerate. So I also want to just mention that when we start with capacity and not ambition, I know when we're on social media, it's really easy to look at what everyone else is doing and to compare ourselves and say, I'm not doing enough. I don't feel like I'm where I want to be in my career. So-and-so is doing so much more than me. And you can create this like internalized sense of shame, guilt, failure, self-doubt, self-deprecation, perfectionism, all of the things. I spend a lot of time in that space. And I just want to encourage you to say, like, a lot of what you're seeing, right, is just not reality for the most part. And we don't know what's going on behind the scenes for each individual person or what their circumstance is. For me, I don't have any kids. I work from home. I have a partner who has an income. Like, I have a lot of privilege in all of the things I just said. I also have a lot of free time because of what I just said. So I don't want you all to compare yourselves to other people because we truly do not know what's happening behind the scenes. When we talk about spoon theory, for those of you who don't know, it was really created pretty simplistically by Christine Marisar. I'm going to mess this name up. Maserandino. Yes, that sounds correct. And she was just sitting at a table with a friend in a diner. And the friend was like asking about capacity. And she was just using spoons to kind of highlight, okay, when this spoon is gone for, this task, it takes up this amount of energy each day. Then this spoon is gone. Then this spoon is gone. Then as we're getting lower and lower, we're talking about very small amounts of capacity, and it takes a long time to regenerate. So scaffolding and pacing. Pacing, we can talk about time-boxed work blocks, frequent short breaks, and planning around season. I am much more creative in the springtime and the early summer. By the end of the summer, I'm pretty much done with my energy. And then I kind of go into hibernation in the fall and the winter time. So I know that for me, I really only have like 3 to 4 months where I have a lot of energy to be creative. And I have to just have some acceptance around that and allow myself to work within the seasons that work best for me. I'm going to share these slides with you, or Carrie is, and that'll give you a clickable link to Dr. Megan Neff's article on the pacing system, energy management for ADHD and autism. So that will be available to you. Scaffolding, supports that make tasks doable. Templates, standard operating procedures, co-working, body doubling, hiring a VA, outsourcing, using AI support. Let's put the pieces in place to make our lives a little bit easier. The little and often beats marathon sprints. If we can chip away at our goals, instead of trying to do everything in these big bursts, especially for an extended period of time, that can work really well for energy systems as well. And then if you can systemize handoffs, so progress can continue when you rest. If you have a VA or you have some sort of admin support, this is where that comes into play. And that means you're going to have to spend some time training them in the front end, but in the long run, hopefully what this is doing is ensuring that you can take those breaks and that you can step away so that your business can continue to run without you, especially in alternative income streams. So for those with chronic illnesses, pacing is crucial. And I think this is a really important thing to just think about. Like, what is my pacing system if I have one at all? What's my scaffolding look like? Do I have anything built in that can protect me from myself? Because that's what I've needed to do going into 2026 is build in systems to protect myself from myself. Because I will get asked to do things. I will get asked to collab, to do trainings, to speak, to be a part of different events. And there is a big part of me that wants to say yes for a lot of reasons. And there is a major part of me that needs to say no. So part of my scaffolding has been ensuring that my administrative support can take over tasks that are, kind of tedious, monotonous, not enjoyable. They're not exciting. They take a lot of energy from me and they don't give me a lot of reward. So those are the things that I try to do. Sorry, need a water break. So when we talk about overexertion, even on a good day, it can lead to crash and symptom relapse. And its pacing is particularly important for conditions like PEM or post-exertional malaise, the energy that it takes to do a thing, the energy that it takes to absorb energy, to absorb stimulation, to make decisions. For long COVID, for other chronic health conditions, all of this plays a role. So what I want you all to do while you're sitting there, whether it be visually or you write this down, and you'll have this slide again, don't worry. Just thinking about weekly hours available to dedicate to your other alternative income streams that you want to kind of start working on. Or if you already have them, the hours you want to dedicate. Minus life maintenance, like sleep, food, admin, recovery, and other clinical non-negotiables. That could be the amount of clients you have to see a week, plus the notes, plus whatever else goes into your own private practices. And whatever's left, that's kind of the true creative capacity for new income projects. And I think that can be hard to reckon with if we look at that number and it doesn't feel as big as we want it to. Like, shit, I don't have the free time that I thought I had. Or my real capacity is like 1 hour a week. But that's okay. Because I think once we start accepting limitations and areas where we really don't have the ability to push ourselves beyond these limits and this capacity, we can stop burning ourselves out and burning it at both ends, so to speak. So there's lots of ways to talk about what can be sustainable. There's evergreen alternative income streams. So that could be like a low spoon digital download, maybe some templates that you can create where you don't have to be involved in a live day-to-day basis. You create them, you either get them on your website and sell them, you put them on an Etsy shop. If you don't know how to do those things, that's where the VA services come in and you hire someone to outsource to. And you just know that can create some recurring income. That could even mean like recording some courses that you're going to sell, but you're going to record them and then you're going to set it and forget it. You're not going to have to be live every single day or every other Friday and spend that energy that you don't have. For me, I have like a retreat planning manual that I co-created and I sell that as an evergreen product on my website. So sometimes I'll wake up the next day and I'll have a couple $100s in my email, in my inbox of people who have purchased that, or people who have purchased content creation courses that I've recorded and put on my website. So those are things that, like, although they took energy in the moment to create, now I don't have to do anything with them. And I know we hear like evergreen recurring passive income is a myth. And I will agree to that to some degree, like, because you do have to put energy into creating it. So it's not just passive, but once you create it, then it becomes low-hanging fruit. If you're thinking about maybe a coaching program or trainings or CE program, that can be kind of a moderate spoons group. Maybe we're using a little bit more energy to do that, but we're really energized by it. We really like the training piece, the coaching piece, the CE piece. And that way we can kind of reckon with the fact that it is going to take more energy, but it's also going to be enjoyable. Then the stuff that is going to be more high spoon usage. This is where you're going to have more high touch point, more access to you. And this is the stuff that I have done too much of in the last 4 years. And I really wish that I would have listened to my VA 4 or 5 years ago about creating more evergreen products, because I don't have the energy to do it now and get that stuff on my website. So that means like retreats, masterminds, intensives. This can be very high reward financially. However, it has a higher cost. So you really have to design your offers to fit your true capacity and not with wishful thinking. Because I know that I've definitely used, like, because ADHDers have an interest-based nervous system and they get really excited about things. I know I've used that excitability about traveling to all of these different countries to convince myself that I have the capacity to do another retreat, that I have the capacity to go from Greece to Spain 2 days later and then host another event. Now I'm sitting here, I'm like, I do not have the energy to do either event. Low spoon offer ideas. These are, like, again, low hanging fruit. These could be email templates and like really basic downloadables, intake scripts, policy packs, downloadable guides. These can also be great list builders for those of you who are looking to build up your newsletter audience. Self-paced miniature courses or micro trainings where you record something, you set it and forget it. People go through it at their own pace. You charge a lower amount for it and you just let people purchase it. Having different SOPs, so operating procedures or forms or checklists or how-tos or guides, paid newsletters or resource libraries. Maybe you want to start a Substack and you really enjoy writing. You can get paid to, once you start getting subscribers on there, if you're putting out good content. So those things can take a little bit less energy. Moderate spoon offers ideas. I'd say live workshops with replays, not recurring live workshops, but one live workshop, you record it, you put it on your website and you let it recur. If you're a CE provider, you can include some CE credit, make it a little bit more enticing. My business, All Things Private Practice, is a CE provider for the MBCC. The application process is a beast. So when we're talking about spoons and energy and capacity, that's where I would hire someone to help you do that if that's something you want to do, because I did not have the energy or the capacity to actually go through that massive application. This could be like short group programs, 4 to 6 weeks at a time, limited to 4 to 6, maybe 8 people total, a manageable amount. When I first started doing coaching back in 2020, I was doing 6-week, 6-person take the leap programs where I was taking people through what I considered to be the biggest and most important pillars of private practice startup. And it was an easy, low energy event. I over-delivered by giving every single one of those people 4 individual coaching sessions. But that's what beta testing's for. And that's why once I got through 1 or 2 of those, I was like, okay, this is not working. Let's scale this back. Licensing your materials to practices and agencies, podcast sponsorships if you have podcasts, or affiliate partnerships on social media if you have a larger following. These are all ways that you can make money, but without exerting yourself and having to be present for hours at a time. And like I said, higher spoon, but worth it offers. Retreats, but I think building in a strong support team, having your vendors in place so that you're not maybe going to a new location and having to do it all yourself. I do a lot of do it all yourselfing. I love trip planning. I love finding the real small businesses and the people and connecting with them. That's actually something that I enjoy a lot of the retreat process. The planning piece, the organization, the structure. That's the stuff that honestly doesn't take that much energy from me. But for a lot of you, if you're like my wife, you're probably like, I absolutely don't want to do any of that. Having some masterminds, a small group consulting or coaching mastermind, where it's niched, it's very specific to something that you feel passionate about. You limit the amount of people. How many weeks are we going to do this? And you cap it at that. Maybe you have a signature coaching program that you want to create, or a certificate program. That's obviously going to be a higher spoon event because you're going to have to go through maybe a certificate program, or maybe you're going to have to build out an entire coaching program. I created a 4-month Take the Leap program eventually a couple of years ago, where it was 4 months, very high touch point with 8 therapists who wanted to not only start their practices, but grow through it. And I envisioned during that time turning that into a program that I was going to call Beyond Private Practice, because I was starting to see my interest change from private practice startup to being more entrepreneurial. Because I think in all areas of this, our niches are versions of us and they evolve over time. So I started thinking like, I'm going to create Beyond Private Practice, and we're going to work on creating income streams that I've created: podcast monetization, coaching programs, speaking engagements, retreats, group practice ownership. And then burnout happens. And even though I've created the whole foundation of it, my VA is like, I don't think you're ready to do this, or you don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, you would be correct. Speaking opportunities, a great opportunity to get paid, but definitely a higher spoon offer. More energy and capacity goes into this. I have a keynote coming up in Michigan at the end of September. Despite the fact that I am so damn burnt out, I'm going to go because it's a good friend of mine hosting the summit, and I want to do right by her and show up for that. But it's, exhausting. So when we talk about accessibility riders, one thing I do when I'm asked to speak at events is like, okay, I'm willing to do that. Let's get everything in place contractually. However, I don't speak before 10 a.m. because I know I don't sleep well, especially the night before a speaking engagement. So I refuse to do that. Thinking about the accommodations that you need built in for if you are pursuing any speaking opportunities. I always think about like the things we want to do first: low energy, high impact. High energy, high impact, that's kind of like, maybe we beta test this and we really build in a lot of supports to see if it works. Low energy, low impact. Save that for later. Put it on a doc that says like, I'll come back to this. I'll circle back. This is not the right idea in this season of life. And then high energy cost and low impact could be a quick win sometimes, but I avoid the low impact stuff. I want to be in the high impact section. That's really where I want to spend a lot of my time. Aligning your offers to your strengths. So leaning into your special interests and your lived experience. That's the stuff that people are drawn to. That's what people are going to hire you to speak about, train about, offer workshops on, etc. If you can involve your special interests or some of the things that you're really passionate about, you're going to feel much more excited about the opportunity, and it's going to take less energy. So modalities you love versus modalities you must monetize. Thinking about like, if I'm going to put energy into learning something new, is the juice worth the squeeze at the end of the day? What's easy for me, that's hard for others. When I first started this business back in 2020, I was teaching therapists how to set up their simple practice accounts and use it in a way where they felt comfortable. And I remember the last training I did right before COVID shut everything down was like to 50 people. And I was just like, why are people paying me to do this thing? But then I thought, I guess things that come naturally or easily to me are not as easy for everyone else. So think about that when you're thinking about your ideas, because I assure you that that's the same situation. If you have these things that come naturally or easily to you, think about how you can offer them to other people. Because if that immediate thought is, this is easy for me, so it's easier for everyone, that's just simply not true. Here are ways to make pricing ethical and affirming so that you can kind of stay aligned to your values. I often give away a couple of retreat spots for people who are multiply marginalized, especially for neurodivergent, queer, trans, Black, brown, Asian, indigenous humans. Like, I want to make sure stuff is affirming, but also accessible. Tiered pricing is always a good thing. You can raise prices with each cohort based on feedback. Nothing has to start at this like astronomical amount. I want you all to think about your boundaries. How often are you outside of your office hours, like answering emails and DMs and trying to create content and doing all of these things? There are definitely ways that you can kind of build in, again, scaffolding and accommodation to support yourself and to make this a little bit easier on your system. So office hours instead of DMs, so you don't have to answer those, so the demands don't pile up. Maybe you create like an asynchronous Q&A form, or you reply in batches. Or for me, I started putting my autoresponder on my email, and I don't respond to email immediately. Or social media auto responses. Communication policies like response times, where you're going to respond, how quickly. I think it's important to think about these boundaries. Marketing that doesn't drain you, super important with alternative income streams. And this is why content is like recyclable and you can repurpose it. So let's say you create a course outline, you turn that course outline into a carousel post that you can post on Instagram. You repurpose that carousel post as an email, and you use it as a webinar introduction. So there are lots of ways where you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I don't. So a lot of my content I'll create, whether I make a reel of it or a shorter form video, that my social media team will turn what I've said into a graphic / static post or carousel post. And then we'll kind of use that to make an email blast off to our newsletter list. We'll use that for webinar introductions. So you do not have to reinvent the wheel. It's quite easy to repurpose and recycle your content in different channels. Accessible delivery and design. Chunking content into 10 to 15-minute modules just for attention span and people with different processing styles. Providing transcripts, captions, slides in advance. Multiple ways to participate. So whether that's via chat, voice, asynchronous, etc. And then predictable routines. So like having the same agenda, having the same structure, being really consistent in that approach. For those of you who are thinking about these income streams, just thinking about how can we launch in a really low spoon way without feeling like we have to do it all in an hour or a day. So week 1, you could put out an interest form, maybe schedule 2 emails and 1 social media post. And again, taking some of the content from one to the other and just repurposing it. Week 2, you could do like a live teaser or a Q&A, and you could have recorded it in advance so that you don't have to do it that week. Then the following week, you open your sales cart and you send some emails that are scheduled in advance. And then you close the cart. And you just kind of like replay this and you mess around to see, where do I find the most energy in this? What do I find to be the most frustrating or overwhelming? Are those things that I can hire out so that I can focus on the stuff that really lights me up? Systems and automation, your scaffolding. So landing pages, checkout, and automated receipts. That means like if someone goes on your registration page for an event, making sure everything is set up in advance so you don't have to deal with the issues that come up when you excitedly open up a course or a coaching program or a retreat or a mastermind. Making sure you automate like your onboarding email sequence, your calendar links that automatically get sent and they go out. And then having some template banks, so like slide decks, agendas, worksheets that you can easily reach for. You have them maybe in a Google Drive folder, and they're just easy for you to click on, download, and send, or you automate and build that into your website. And then the same thing post-event for feedback forms and testimonials. And I just want to say this now, always collect testimonials. This is great marketing for you and great ways to support your next vision. Here are some ways that I think collaboration and delegation works really well. Co-creating, so partner with someone to have the spoons, so to speak, so that you can put in 2 spoons, they can put in 2 spoons, you don't have to put in all 5 of yours. Hire a VA, like I said, for admin, for editing, for formatting, for captions, for anything that you can think of. There is someone to hire, I promise you. You can go on Fiverr, Fiverr, if you are like, where do I find these people? You can ask for recommendations in any of these groups that you're a part of. Contract support. So that might be someone who manages the back end of the CE situation. If you want to partner with someone who's already CE approved for an event that you want to do, and they can handle the CE side. And then again, setting boundaries. So crucial. Done for you versus done with you. I always like, if you want to mitigate risk and you're like, I really want to create this coaching program or this idea, but I don't know if anyone would sign up. And then that's a lot of energy that gets wasted. Pilot programs, beta test it. The first Take the Leap program that I did, I beta tested on 8 local friends here in Asheville. And the trade-off was like, take my program that I'm going to charge people money for, give me honest feedback, and in exchange, give me a review and a testimonial. Set minimum enrollment and cancellation policies to safeguard yourself if you want. I always think even if 1 or 2 people sign up, that's okay. That's not a failure. You can still show up and do a great freaking job, and those people will rave about it to someone else. They're going to get more attention from you. And make sure you buffer your weeks pre and post delivery of a workshop or a training or a course or a program to just give yourself some rest and recover time. Keeping a snooze list, which for me is Patrick's ADHD list, and that lives in a Google Doc. And that's just an ideal list for later seasons of life. And I always need to tell myself that no does not mean no forever. It just means no for right now. And my list is, because I love lists, color-coded, green, yellow, and red. Green is like, hell yes, that's the things we're going to do. Those are the things we're putting in motion immediately. Maybe they're low energy, maybe they're low impact in that way, but they feel exciting and I know that I want to pursue them. Yellow is, I was excited about those 3 days ago. Now I'm kind of like, eh. Or like the things where you're like, I'm really good at this, but I don't know if I'm really excited about this. And then red is, again, no for right now, not forever. And that's really important for you all who are ADHDers. Because anytime I tell my ADHD that I can't do something, I'm going to figure out a lot of different ways to actually make the thing happen. Keep your therapy and your coaching and boundaries and disclosures and businesses and all those things separate. Really important. Everyone always asks that, but I always want you to keep your therapy and coaching businesses separate. Make sure you have disclaimers, terms of service, refund policies, all of that stuff set up. Obviously, like get an EIN and an LLC or an accountant for tax planning. And if you are doing clinical work, but more like consulting or training, I would definitely want to maintain HIPAA compliant boundaries in your state. So you can refer to this when you go back to the slides, but this is just a 1-page offer map for you to start tracking some of this stuff so you can pay attention to your energy. So you can create your own pacing plan so that you don't burn yourself out. We're not going to really take 7 minutes on this, but I do want you to think about it. Just pick one idea, the smallest creatable version of it. If you've been thinking about a course, how do we break that down to its smallest form? What I mean by that, when I first started my business, I was doing a lot of talks on imposter syndrome and self-doubt because I was experiencing a lot of it. And my first smallest creatable version of that was just a 1-hour free webinar about imposter syndrome. My Shih Tzu just got back if you hear a really heavy panting in the background. So what's the smallest creatable version of that? How can we make something that feels really tangible, really doable? We don't have to think much about it. Where will our spoons be spent if we're creating that small version? Which activity is going to take how many spoons? How much energy is each piece of this going to take? And what scaffolds or supports can I build in to reduce that spend? So I just want you to sit with that for a minute and just think about that, or whatever your idea is for your alternative income stream. And we'll come back to that. So a 30-day low spoon action plan. Again, this is just kind of something I shared before, but you can use this as a visual. I would create an interest form. So I would want to know what stage best describes me right now. What support formats work best for you, whether that's asynchronous, captions, replays, short lives, office hours. What are the best ways that you typically show up and feel supported? What price tier feels accessible? And what outcome would make this a clear win? These are things to be thinking about when you start your new projects. Because again, if we're just leading with excitement and the novelty of the new thing, that can wear off. And I want to know, when I circle back to hold myself accountable, what was going to make this a clear win? Why did I feel so excited about this? And if it's no longer exciting to me, I really need to drop it instead of pushing through. Because I think a lot of us, especially those of us who are also ADHDers, we really struggle with this notion that we can never start and finish anything. And that can be really shame-inducing. But the reality is often it's not that you can't start and finish something or see it through. It's just like, maybe it's just no longer interesting. Maybe it's no longer exciting. And that's okay. So I want you all to think about reflections and next steps, because this is a really important piece. So what's one boundary you'll set this week? What's one support you'll add, whether it's a human support or tech support? And I want you to commit to just one tiny specific next step within 48 hours. And again, tiny specific step. Build your rest in. Build your boundaries into your schedule so that you can protect yourself from you. You already went over that, so that's a duplicate. Sorry for that. Refund and cancel policies, I would get really familiar with whatever you feel comfortable with. And that way you can talk about it confidently when people ask, because people are going to ask when you launch a course or a coaching program or a retreat. What's the cancellation policy? How does this work? Oh, I guess we're at the end. I'll go to questions in a second. So here's a link, a QR code that you can scan. It takes you to all my resources, guides, downloadables, deliverables, all those things. But they're going to be in the slide deck anyway, so I'm not going to spend time on that. If you want to see the TEDx that I did on autism discovery, or hire me to train your group practice or workplace, and then my podcast. But I'm not going to spend time on that. It's in the slide deck. So we're going to take questions now and wrap up that portion.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. That was terrific. So much good content. We have had some questions come in. I will just start right up at the top. Gina was asking if you have any recommendations or tips for gaining awareness to the honest available hours.
Yeah, that's a great question, Gina. I think you have to trial and error it sometime to kind of take a look at, like what we were talking about before. How many hours do you think you have? And then really taking a look at, like, what does my typical week look like? Where am I spending my time? So we want to map it out. We want to get a really good understanding of probably like a 60-day view of what does each week typically look like? How much time am I spending doing therapy? How much time am I doing notes? How much time am I doing marketing? Like, let's build all of that in. And then we really need to pay attention to, how are we feeling after each week? Do we feel like we have anything left to give? Are there certain days of the week where I feel more energized? Am I noticing a pattern with my schedule where I'm like, ooh, when I start my day later, I feel better? Or when I do sessions back to back to back, I feel better. Everyone's system is different. So I would really just be mapping it out for a 60-day period and getting really familiar with that.
Great answer. Rosina is asking how to manage when your autistic side doesn't want to cooperate with your ADHD side. For example, one side wants a black and white plan and the other doesn't want to be locked into something because what if something else comes up, or I'm not in the mood for whatever it is when the time comes around?
Yep. So I think that my autistic side and I don't want to overgeneralize this, but is typically the side that's going to appreciate the structure, the routine, the predictability. And the ADHD side is going to be the one that's like, this is boring. This is not what I want to be doing. I want to do something different with my time. And I have to like build a container for the ADHD, but I can't have the walls be like concrete. Like what I mean by that is when ADHD feels really constrained and constricted, it gets really irritable and restless and overwhelmed because the fear is like, oh my God, no more new things. This leads to burnout and depression. So I have to give it a little space to be creative. And maybe that means building in that time. Maybe you want more spontaneity. Maybe that means switching up your environment from time to time. Let me go to a coffee shop and just be around other humans. Let me go for a walk. Let me go into nature. Let me go somewhere where I feel really like I can access some creativity. And I think being able to access playfulness is also super important for both sides, and to really prevent burnout as well. So it's a delicate dance and more like a tug of war. But I talk about that a lot on my podcast and on my social media content. I've got a lot of content about ADHD, autism, tug of war. So plenty of resources out there. You just got to figure out what works best for you. Probably not going to be a permanent solution either.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great answer. So Dawn weighed in some slides back and was saying that the lower spoons look great, but it seems it will take a lot of energy to advertise. And so when something takes a lot of energy, it turns into a higher spoon. So I would imagine that these are all like case by case. What might be a smaller spoon to you might be a larger spoon to someone else. Yes.
Absolutely. Because everyone, a lot of us have spikier profiles. So something that might come real easily and naturally to me might not take a lot of energy, but something else that is really hard for me takes a ton of energy, but is easy for someone else. So like, we just have to kind of view everything very much individually and on a case by case basis. And that's again why I think like delegation and administrative support so crucial.
Okay, good. Rebecca's asking, how can we navigate pushback because of pricing?
I think that's why you have to test the market. Like you have to see what other offers are out there that are similar. What are yours? What are your offers including that feels like it really makes it valuable? Getting really comfortable overcoming objections is a part of it. So we're in a weird economic time right now and people are very financially stressed. So I think it's important to kind of get a sense of what's the value that my offer has that sets it apart and how can I stand behind that confidently, acknowledging that like your offer is not going to be for everybody. Not everybody can afford to come on the retreats that I host. They just can't. And that's okay. My New Zealand retreat that's happening in March is $9,000 a person. And that's definitely not going to be for everybody. Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely. And there are also people hosting retreats for like a couple $100s. And I think it's just a matter of acknowledging like, do I have an engaged audience? Do I have people who are probably going to commit to something that I'm going to put out there? If I don't, then building the audience is the biggest battle, but it's the most important one.
Yep. All true. Calvary is asking what software or apps you found most helpful. I know you mentioned Gamma, which is going to be my new favorite too. What other software or apps have you found most helpful?
Oh, such a fun entry point to the disclaimer of I understand all of the issues and risks around AI. And I also understand how helpful they are for me and my brain type. So I do use ChatGPT a lot. I do use Gamma a lot, and I use them to coincide with one another. I'm not like using ChatGPT to like do things that I can do on Google, but certainly am using AI when it helps me with the heavier lift.
Yeah.
So those are my two go-tos right now, and I use them hand in hand together to create PowerPoints, to create trainings, to create workshop ideas, like to help me get out of my own freaking head and just create clarity.
And of course, that's alongside Spruce.
Oh yeah, yes. I mean, I wouldn't be, listen, I'll be very honest. I wouldn't be sitting here in the state that I'm in terms of burnout, doing this collab and this webinar if I didn't 100% stand behind Spruce Health, because we've been partners for almost 4 years now. So I use Spruce for my group practice and what I'll do for automation and to make my life easier, the schedule send feature, because my ideas will come to me at random times and I don't want to bombard my clinicians at 7 p.m., 9 p.m. Hell, I don't want to bombard them at 5:01 p.m. if they get done at 5. So schedule sending messages for the next day, super important for me at least. Setting up automations behind the scenes so that it's easier when you're out of the office, super important. So yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Thanks. Wasn't fishing, but had to throw.
No, trust me. I agree.
Love it. Love it. Okay. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Mona Mia is curious about your experience building your first podcast. How did you move past the imposter stage and stay motivated with some of the high spoons parts of that process? Because it does even seem overwhelming to me too. So I want to know.
I'm just going to share my QR code for my podcast so you all can look at it. Because hell, why not? Because that's what the entire podcast is about. For all things private practice is how do we move through self-doubt, imposter syndrome, and perfectionism and just get started? Mm-hmm. And in my mind, a lot of the things I've created in my life, I sat on for longer than I should have because of those things. Self-doubt, imposter syndrome. I don't know how. I can't pick a name. I can't pick a platform. You just have to do it. And that is the real reality. I have in my downloadables on my website, I have a guide on how to create, how to move beyond private practice, and podcasting is one of those things. And it's really as simple as like, you can literally record episodes on Zoom. That's where both podcasts, All Things Private Practice and Divergent Conversations, get done from right here in my office on Zoom. I have a good mic. I have a good camera. I upload it. I have someone edit it. That person puts it into the platform. But when you're first starting out, you might not be able to hire someone to edit and upload. You might have to do more heavy lifting, but it really is not as hard as you think that it is. And what I would start with is not even picking a name, just picking a target audience. Who do you think is going to listen to this? What is the theme of this podcast? And then I would open a Google Doc and I would list every single episode idea that I have and that I could talk about for 20 to 30 minutes or however long your episodes are going to be of your time. And I imagine that once you start getting those ideas out, some of those ideas will lead to more ideas, or you'll expand on ideas, or you'll make one of those ideas into a series. And that's kind of what happens. But it doesn't happen when it all lives in our head. And it really just needs to get out and into the world. And then you need to start working on it. So building the plane as you fly it is kind of the way I look at it. And that's exactly why I trademarked the phrase doubt yourself and do it anyway, because that is the story and the epitome of not only my life, but a lot of your lives while you're sitting here right now.
Such a good tagline. I love it. I love it. Yeah. To remember that and use it more often. Michael's asking, do you have any advice for finding a VA, which by the way, folks, stands for virtual assistant, that understands ADHD inattentive needs and can support with building plans, goals, and accountability?
Yeah, I think that I would be trying to ask questions like that in some of the neurodivergent therapy Facebook groups or communities, because it's very likely that people within those groups are going to have a couple of names to give when you have specifics. And when I'm hiring a VA, what I really want to do, because I've made this mistake in the past, is you really have to get clear on what you're hiring them to do. Because otherwise you're going to hire them and get frustrated that they're not doing what you have inside of your head, or they're doing things differently, but you haven't given them like an SOP or an explanation or any training. So clarity is huge. Like having clarity about like, here are the tasks that I need support with. And that could be another situation where you just open up Google, create a doc, anytime during the day, something comes up where you're like, oh, that again, or that took way too much time, or I don't know how to do that. Or I don't want to do that. Add it to that list because that will really inform like what you are hiring for. Way too often people just put in threads like looking for a VA for my business. And you're like, oh, okay. What do you need help with?
Yes, good. Man, I mean, folks are dropping in questions and I love it. We've got about 3 minutes left. Let's answer Allison's question and see if we have time for one more after that.
Sure.
Allison's asking, how do you manage and communicate your different needs to clinicians and support staff that work for you, especially in a group practice? How do you structure this when working closely with others?
We have a communications form that I built into a Google form. And it's about communication style and preference because I acknowledge like not everyone communicates and processes information the way I do or prefers to. So because we are a neurodivergent, diversity affirming group practice and we hire exclusively all neurodivergent therapists, I need to ensure that everyone is aware of each other's communication styles and preferences. And that even includes like when I do one-on-one check-ins with staff, maybe it's via virtual video call, maybe it's with video off, maybe it's phone call, maybe it's a text, maybe it's an email. So like there's no one size fits all approach. I've hired people before via email without ever seeing their faces. Like, I think it's just a situation where you have to kind of allow yourself more flexibility about like what does a workplace look like and how does it need to be structured.
Yeah, nice. This one, let's see if you can do it in a minute. Anonymous attendee saying one of their main concerns, this person happens to have long COVID, is how to do anything with flexibility while not being unreliable because this person can't really plan anymore in the way that they used to. And this is coming from someone who used to be a perfectionist and an overachiever.
Yeah, I think that's when it's building in that buffer time, building in that like that time in your maybe your agenda or your terms and conditions or even right on your registration page that we are building in alternative dates, acknowledging that the people that we are supporting, including myself, have immune compromisations and we're going to struggle with our energy levels and they're going to fluctuate. So we're oftentimes going to flex our dates. Like you can get really creative in how you show up and just transparently share some of these details.
Nice. I got to say, we are at noon on the nose for those on Pacific time. We did have some questions that were left unanswered. You all will know how to get in touch with Patrick if you would like to, because I'm going to be sharing this recording and the slides after we wrap today. A huge thank you to you, Patrick. It is always such a joy to have you. You are an incredible storyteller, and your life is fascinating to me, as clearly you have quite a following to many. So we got to do this again. Thank you. Thank you. I wish I could join you in Greece, maybe next time. And with that, thank you to everybody who joined us today. Look for those resources coming your way.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.